Hello everyone. This presentation will be about apple orchard floor management. Presenting will be Stephanie Russo to talk about soils, Holden Druffel, temperature and sunlight, Caleb St. Hilaire, cover cropping, Gwyneth Alonco, sanitation management, and Brandon Benson, weed management. Hello everyone, my name is Stephanie Russo, and I will be discussing the role of soils in apple orchard floor management. When talking about soils in apple orchard floor management, there are several different properties of soil that it's important to take a look at, and some of them include soil texture, soil moisture, soil pH, salinity, nutrient availability, and microbial activity. You'd also, before establishing an orchard, want to identify any unsuitable areas due to physical barriers to root growth or drainage. It's also important to assess the variability in soil properties within the field so as to develop an appropriate nutrient management plan. Soil is complex and dynamic. It is a living, breathing system. Live matter, dead matter, and decomposing matter are all interacting and influencing the physical and chemical properties of the soil. When the soil food web is in balance, the soil is more productive. Better soil, better apples. Maintaining soil health is a crucial factor in maintaining orchard health. The NRCS defines soil health as the continued capacity of soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans. An important property of soil is its ability to hold water. Water holding capacity, or WHC, of soil is the soil's ability to hold water for plant use. Micropores are responsible for a soil's WHC. Different types of soil, sand, silt, and clay, have different pore sizes, which allows water to drain through soil at different rates. The proportions of sand, silt, and clay in soil determine the water holding capacity. Medium textured soils, silts or loams, are the most suitable for plant growth. Soil texture, soil structure, compaction, and organic matter all affect soil porosity and infiltration rates. Soil nutrients that are available for plant uptake are largely influenced by the cation exchange capacity of the soil. Cation exchange capacity is dependent upon soil texture and organic matter content. The more clay and more organic matter in the soil, the higher the cation exchange capacity. And the CEC of most soils increases with an increase in soil pH. Apple trees prefer a slightly acidic to neutral soil, with a pH between 5.8 and 7.0. Extreme soil pH values result in nutrient tie-up or toxicity and poor tree and fruit development. The table on the left highlights the cation exchange capacity of soil textures that apple trees do well in. Those are loams and silt loams. And in loams, it's 10 to 15 milliequivalents per 100 grams of soil. In silt loams, 15 to 25. The graph on the right highlights available nutrients within the pH range that apple trees prefer. The role of soil microbes in apple orchards is very influential. Certain protozoan bacteria directly stimulate apple root generation. Different rootstocks attract different rhizosphere microbiomes that can influence subsequent tree health and performance. Previous established rhizosphere microbiomes in soil have been shown to correlate with apple growth and disease. Healthy microbial communities makes for healthier apple trees.
Hello everyone, Holden here to discuss my portion, which is on climate and temperature in the orchards. There will be generalizations from orchard to orchard, but pretty much it all ranges about the same, so please enjoy. As of now, we should all be well acquainted with the Köppen climate classification. Orchards are a very unique commodity as they take special conditions to grow. They range from Oregon to Georgia all the way up to northern Wisconsin. One thing that they all keep in common is that they are all above or at temperate climate levels, with a higher than average rainfall. The temperature is very important because some orchards rely on pollinations from bees, and we all know bees hate the cold weather. So when looking at the Köppen scale, we want to look to see where orchards are situated, look at their temperature that are at temperate to higher warm conditions, but not too hot, and we want above average rainfall. For this slide, I had only looked at fruit trees, basically apples, oranges, and a few others in between. When you get into other orchard situations such as wine grapes, olives, everything changes, so keep that in mind. Like the Köppen climate classification, hardiness zones is something we've gone over before, but just for a quick reminder, it is a geographical location that determines what temperatures certain plant life is capable of growing in. In this slide, we can see a map of Oregon and its hardiness zones. We know that apple production is best grown in areas 5B and 8A, which is definitely a large areas, but when you include other factors such as irrigation, rainfall, and maybe soil conditions, it definitely shrinks down. A lot of orchard production is in the Hood River area and the Fruit Loop Trail. But there is another area of orchard production, which is the wine vineyards in the Willamette Valley. Temperature is key for the production of trees and the fruit that they will bear later. So let's look at some information I found from WSU's research program on apple trees. No two apples are the same, but these are the averages for the apple trees that I was given. Fruit-bearing trees, ideal temperature range of soil conditions is between 64 degrees Fahrenheit and 77 degrees Fahrenheit. They're able to get the most out of growing degree days at these temperatures. Soil temps, though, are usually 4 degrees lower than the air temperature due to the natural canvas that apple trees provide. Production of apple trees slows or stops completely if soil temperatures go below 59 or exceed temperatures of 88. And there are some clever ways that farmers have come up with to manipulate these conditions. And we will look at that in the next slide. Microclimate areas have always been on the mind of orchard farmers. Finding ways to manipulate them for better production and growing degree days have always been on their mind. Just simple tasks like cleanliness or unnatural additives to the area can produce production, but there are some unnatural additives that can also have the same effect. A simple cleaning of unwanted debris, weeds, and other plant life that is not natural to the area can boost soil temperatures by 2 degrees and air temperatures by 4 degrees. This is key in early spring when there is little heat and you need all the extra degrees you can get for the growing degree days. Adding unnatural elements such as black plastic around the base of the trees to cover up the soil can greatly boost your growing degree day production. Looking at the graph to the left, you can see 4 different variations they did in tests and see what accumulated growing degree days was in the end. You can tell that the full ground cover, meaning sticks, stones, and unwanted plant life, was the worst, while adding black plastic around the base and a herbicide strip ended up being your best overall.
Hey guys, Caleb St. Hilaire. We're going to review cover crops and cropping within orchard floor management. Overview and varieties. A cover crop or cover cropping is a non-cash crop or weed grown expressly to supplement the primary crop. The function of the benefits provided are varying and indirect. Within the Pacific Northwest, there are numerous varieties that can be utilized, each with their own array of potential benefits and or drawbacks. Though many of the species listed below do overlap, they can be divided into 3 general categories, varying by approach and variety. Perennials include grasses, legumes, broadleafs, and flowering varieties. Annuals include vetch, clover, legumes, grasses, mustards, flowering, and buckwheat. Annual mixed is a mixed combination of cereal grains, legumes, mixed flowering, broadleaf varieties, and or mustards. As noted by the picture to the right of the slide, it is a mix of mustard and flowering varieties. Benefits. Orchard cover crops and croppings are primarily grown to enhance the soil. These enhancements vary, but generally consist of the addition of organic matter, increased microbial activity, increased water retention, compaction alleviation, and erosion deterrence. Do note that different floor management practices and varieties can provide an emphasis on one of the benefits, but we'll continue that with the next slide. Benefits continued. So the different groups, those that were noted in slide 1, that is perennials, annuals, and annuals mixed, are suitable for different floor management practices and conditions. An example would be perennials, or more suited to mowing. When you're regular mowing, annuals have a hard time getting established. Certain varieties can bring specific benefits. Legumes, for example, are a natural source of nitrogen via nitrogen fixation, which is a conversion of atmospheric nitrogen into soil forms accessible to plants, or in this case, our orchard trees. Flowering varieties are a habitat for natural predators. An example would be sweet asylum, which attracts syrphid flies, which prey on woolly apple aphids. In addition, mustards, via their properties, suppress nematodes. If you take a peek at the asylum field experiment pictures on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see the variance in control versus sweet asylum. Problems incurred by cover crops and croppings. So, cover crops and croppings can conflict or impede operations and orchard growth. This varies in type and intensity with the type of species used. So, the first item would be water and nutrients. Cover crops and croppings obviously increase total water requirements. Additionally, they can compete for nutrients with the orchard trees. And another item would be orchard activities. Cover crops can conflict with the need to perform sanitation or pruning related activities. Pests. Cover croppings can invite pests, acting as a host for nematodes or habitat for vertebrate pests such as voles. In addition, frost. Bare ground absorbs heat more efficiently than covered ground. As such, cover crops increase the risk of frost by diminishing the amount of heat released at night. If you take a look at the picture on the right, that damage can be contributed to voles. So, choosing an appropriate cover crop. So, as you can tell by the previous slides we've reviewed, there are several items that we should consider prior to planting a cover crop. Orchard floor management, practices such as cultivation and mowing are going to influence the type of crops that can be successfully grown. Additionally, whether the benefits will be negated or complemented by these operations should be considered. Irrigation methods. Drip or full coverage irrigation influences the type of species that can be grown. If your irrigation is not a full coverage irrigation, you should probably be looking at species that are drought or heat resistant or tolerant. Orchard variety, so as for example the apples in Sweet Asylum, certain species complement different varieties grown. Shading, so as your orchard matures, cover crop species that are more shade tolerant should be utilized. The soil type and climate. Soil types such as sandy soils should emphasize cover crops that produce organic matter. Areas that receive heavy rainfall should emphasize cover crops that provide a firmer floor or orchard or increased water retention. Thanks for taking the time to go through cover crops with me.
Apple Orchard Sanitation Management. Sanitation is vital for apple orchard floor management because fungal and bacterial pathogens overwinter in leaves, prune limbs, and fruit. Improper sanitation is a source for disease and pest, and sanitation reduces the chance of spreading pathogens to healthy trees. Sanitation is another name for disease prevention. It is very important for maintaining healthy fruit trees. If diseased limbs and debris on the orchard floor are removed from the orchard, then pesticide use can also be reduced. This removal of debris can reduce problems with resistant development to fungicides on a part of the pathogen. The two most common diseases in eastern Pacific Northwest apple orchards are fire blight and apple scab. Fire blight is a bacterial pathogen that overwinters in the bark of trees, forming cankers. It also infects the blossoms, leading to shriveling and color change, and the tips of shoots form what looks like a shepherd's crook. Apple scab, on the other hand, is a fungal infection where velvety spots appear on the fruit and leaves and harden to scabs, similar to those of humans. It overwinters on dead apple leaves or fruit on the ground. And diseases is what drives sanitation management in orchards. Some practical practices for the reduction of pathogens include planting disease-resistant varieties, pruning to maintain open canopy, minimizing pest and rodent habitat, irrigating in a way that does not create wet foliage, monitoring for pests and diseases, removing fallen fruit and debris. Some disease-reducing production techniques include pruning of infected limbs, which helps keep pathogens from spreading both within the initial tree and other trees in the orchard. And if unable to prune the trees while fully dormant, it's important to clean the pruners between each tree, and then properly dispose of removed limbs and foliage to prevent continued infection, the spread of infection, or to prevent the attraction of pests and rodents. Leaf litter management is also an important part. This involves the removal of leaves through plowing between rows and sweeping in alleys, which gives significant reductions in leaf and fruit scab development. Flail mowing of limbs and leaves will help break them down more quickly and reduce fungal inoculation. Antibiotic spraying helps combat diseases like fire blight. Urea sprays in spring and fall speed up the breakdown of leaves where scab overwinters, and fungicides can also be used in more advanced infections.
This is the weed management section of apple orchards. Cultural practices and prevention. Prevention is the least costly, most important aspect to weed and pest management. Cleaning equipment, composting mulches, and feeding livestock weed-free forage a few days before targeted grazing are important considerations. Mechanical removal or tilling in this alleyway or weed strip may remove weeds, but it may also leave the soil bare to erode and dry out quickly. There's a photo of a historical plowing in the alleyway. Covered crops, green chop, or living mulches. Cover crops significantly compete with and reduce weeds. They provide organic matter and mulch that can be mowed and blown into alleyways or the weed strip, which is the area underneath the trees. Some cover crops may be habitat for beneficial biocontrol agents of pests or weeds. However, this benefit is reduced with reduced biodiversity or the usage of broad-spectrum herbicides. In addition to weed management benefits, cover crops also increase water infiltration, improve soil structure, improve soil microbe activity, reduce erosion, provide forage for pollinators, provide traction for equipment, and legume cover crops may add nitrogen to the soil or soak up excess nitrogen. Next, we have mulching. There are a variety of mulches that can be used by themselves or in combination for effects other than weed suppression, including suppression of pests, improved soil quality, or water conservation. Often the thicker the mulch, the more effective for weed control. Mulches that contain weed seed may promote weed growth. Similarly, mulches should be relatively free of pathogens and pests. Composting mulches can reduce viability of weed seeds, pests, and pathogens. Bark or wood chip mulches from cedar may reduce insect pests. Mulch types include straw and hay, fine wood particles like sawdust, bark chips, wood chips, grass clippings, crushed rock or gravel, crop waste, cardboard, plastic liners, and even industrial waste materials such as shredded tires. Livestock such as sheep and goats have been used for centuries to control weeds and understory vegetation in orchards. Targeted grazing can be used to clean up debris and excess growth while adding fertilizer. Fencing, water access, and holding areas or other forage plots are needed for the livestock. Animals should not graze in excessive wet conditions as compaction, reduction of ground cover, and erosion may occur. Animals in ground cover should be monitored to prevent overgrazing. In conventional weed management, there are a myriad of herbicides available. It is important to know the label as it is the law. It's also important to know your target species and life cycle. Annuals are best controlled with pre-emergence herbicides. Perennials are best controlled with post-emergence herbicides. Herbicide resistance is on the rise. Using herbicides as infrequently as possible and alternating between modes of action can help reduce but not eliminate resistance. Herbicides are also a contributing factor to colony collapse syndrome, and caution should always be used. Never spray herbicides on flowering plants or plants about to flower. Local resistance information can be found at your local extension office. Integrated weed management combines all management strategies, including biological, chemical, mechanical, and cultural, to prevent, control, or eradicate a weed species or infestation. Herbicides are generally saved as a last resort. Management plans need to include a description of the property size, type, resource locations, and soils, density and distribution of weeds, weed species, and life cycles, or the propagation of the weed. Goals and objectives for the property. The priorities for the weed management, including the priority species, management actions, the interaction of management actions, a monitoring plan, and a budget, because farmers may have to choose between which species or actions to pursue based on limited funds or labor. Historical, less intensely managed orchards welcomed wildflower understory. Wildflowers provide important forage for pollinators and predators of pests. In addition to cover crop benefits, pollinator, and beneficial insect habitat, some wildflowers may also be used for homeopathic remedies such as St. John's wort and echinacea, among others. Some prefer the aesthetics of a mowed lawn understory. Some prefer the aesthetics of wildflowers. Wildflowers can be utilized around orchards and in borders if they are not wanted in the alleyways or under trees.
Thank you for taking the time to watch our presentation on floor management strategies for apple orchards. To summarize what we've covered today, soil properties such as texture, pH, cation exchange capacity, water holding capacity, and microbial activity are important factors to consider prior to establishing an apple orchard and in maintaining soil health for the duration and future of apple production. From macroclimates to microclimates, climate and temperature are highly influential environmental considerations in apple orchard floor management strategies. Making sure that orchard conditions stay within defined tolerance zones is key to any successful management strategy. Cover crops can be an extremely beneficial addition to an apple orchard, increasing soil health, reducing compaction and erosion, and increasing water retention, but may not be an appropriate management strategy for all production systems. Sanitation management in apple orchards is a critical part of maintaining orchard health. Sanitation strategies help to reduce pathogens and decrease pest populations. The management of weeds enables orchards to be more productive by reducing resource competition between plants. Weed management strategies are diverse and range from more traditional methods, such as using herbicide applications, to more dynamic strategies, such as cover cropping, mulching, and grazing. Floor management strategies for apple orchards are wide-ranging and diverse. Geography, environment, and management goals will will help determine which approach is best suited for your apple orchard.